Can a single stop at boxes cost you the world championship? Today I am going to tell you how a seemingly minor error of McLaren in Azerbaijan could be the turning point that defines the 2025 season for Lando Norris, and how a hidden pattern threatens to repeat itself. Was it just bad luck? Or there is something deeper that McLaren does not want us to know? The Azerbaijan 2025 Grand Prix was not just another career in the calendar. It was a turning point. For McLaren, it was the opportunity to consolidate his technical domain in the start of the championship. For Lando Norris, it meant much more. It was a real opportunity to win a career in difficult conditions, against direct rivals that were not going to forgive or the slightest error. And what happened in that lap 38 was precisely that, an error but not any one, but one that could rewrite the script of this season. The race was entering its most strategic phase. The stop window opened with a promise. Whoever took advantage of it could win up to 2 positions. In Baku, the undercut is extremely powerful because of the long straight lines that allow the tires to be heated more quickly than in other urban paths. McLaren knew it. His plan was clear, to call Norris at the perfect moment so that with new tires he would leave Charles Leclerc. A surgical movement, calculated to the millimeter. But the execution failed. The pit lane traffic light shone in red for 4.1 seconds. For seconds that felt an eternity. The air gun that should fix the nut of the right front tire slipped. It was not an obvious failure with the naked eye, but devastating. The socket did not compose at all, and when the mechanic activated the tool, it turned without grip, generating a small spark, and a great waste of time. A second attempt was needed. And in Formula One, the latter are more expensive than millions of euros in aerodynamic development. In that small interval, Norris's strategic advantage evaporated. Leclerc, who was already pushing, managed to maintain his position. And worse, George Russell, who was barely out of reach before the stops, managed to overcome it as well. Norris went from fighting for second place to meet both rivals. Not only wasting time, he lost clean air, lost pace, lost control of the race narrative. It is important to understand that in Baku, recovering positions is not simple. Although the circuit has long straight, the locked sectors and braking areas are extremely technical. The car that goes forward always has a small advantage, and the DRS does not always guarantee overtaking. Norris was caught in a rhythm train managed by experienced pilots and defensive strategies designed to block the McLaren tire game. But the impact was not only on the immediate result. The most serious thing was what he showed. This was not an isolated human error. It was the symptom of a deeper problem within the McLaren operating system. A system that, despite its brilliance in design and development of the MCL39, still leaves cracks in key moments. And that, for a pilot like Norris who has been waiting for the perfect car for years, it can be as frustrating as losing a race in the last curve. This was the moment where everything changed. A boxes that should be the catapult to a victory or at least a second solid place became an anchor that dragged Norris towards the 4th final place. And that, in a championship as tight as that of 2025, is a loss that could weigh for months. Was it just bad luck? Or a sign that McLaren has not yet tamed his own ghosts of the past? Immediately, the truth is that Baku was one more scar in the history of the lost opportunities of Lando Norris. A story that is still written with talent but also with errors that, at the highest level of Formula One, are paid with positions and with championships. What happened in Azerbaijan was not an anomaly. It was not an isolated stumble. It was the confirmation of a pattern that, in silence, has begun to erode McLaren's reliability in its boxes. When something happens once, it is labeled as an accident. But when it starts to repeat itself, it becomes a signal. And that signal points directly to the heart of a structural problem that McLaren has not been able to correct. In Monza, 2 weeks before, Lando Norris had already lived a similar experience. There, the problem was not in the right front tire, but on the left. And there were not 4.1 seconds as in Baku, they were 5.9. Almost 6 seconds detained. On a track like Monza, known for its high speeds and margins, losing almost 4 additional seconds with respect to an optimal stop is catastrophic. And yet it happened. Again with Norris. Again with a pneumatic gun. Again at a key race. When these events are analyzed in sequence, a worrying image arises. McLaren, despite its excellent track performance and a first-class technical unit, is failing what its most controlled part should be: boxes and boxes. The stop is the only time when the car ceases to be driven by the pilot and becomes completely in the hands of the team. And there they are losing races. The data speak for themselves. So far from 2025, McLaren has registered 16 stops above 3 seconds. Of those, 8 exceeded 3.5 and 3 came to cross the critical brand of the 4 seconds. No other team has similar figures. Red Bull, with all its internal crises, continues to average less operational errors. Mercedes, even with a less dominant car, has been clinically precise in pits. Ferrari, traditionally one of the most erratic teams in boxes, has greatly surpassed McLaren in consistency this year. When the car reaches the pits area after several turns to the limit, the right tire cube is at its highest temperature point. This directly affects 2 key factors: the thermal dilation of the nut and the sensitivity of the pneumatic gun coupling. The expansion of the metal in that area is sufficient to alter the expected behavior of the tools, causing the operator to have to apply a different pressure or slightly modify the input angle. A millimeter outside the ideal angle and the gun can slip, as happened with Norris. The entrance to Baku boxes is one of the most treacherous of the season. It is preceded by a medium speed curve, which implies that the pilot reaches the pits lane with a slight still active lateral load. This generates micro-displaces on the front axle, just before stopping completely. If the car does not stop exactly at the optimal point, even if it is a few centimeters, it can cause the box's equipment to have to adjust its position manually to access the nuts. That little mismatch introduces a second of doubt. And in Formula 1, a second is an eternity. The McL39, on the other hand, adds another layer of complexity. This car was designed with an extremely aggressive approach in mass cast and dynamic balance. It has a fiercest front than its predecessors, which favors its curve entry, but also makes it more sensitive to micro variations in temperature and flexion of the chassis. In other words, what makes it fast on the track makes it more unpredictable in boxes when conditions are not ideal. And here is the core of the problem. McLaren, in its search for aerodynamic efficiency and technical advantage, may be pushing its design beyond what your operational procedures can control. In Baku, that was manifested as a 4.1 second stop. But what is at stake are not just those 4 additional tenths. What is at stake is the credibility of the complete system. Because if you cannot trust that your car is going to stop and leave without setbacks at the exact moment you need it most, your entire career advantage in technical development in pilot's consistency, it falls apart. It's like building a millimeter precision castle with unstable foundations. And the most ironic of all is that Baku, with its appearance of chaotic and urban circuit, what it really does is expose the hidden deficiencies in the structure of a team. It does not punish talent. It punishes the lack of surgical preparation. And McLaren, for the second consecutive race, showed that he still has a weak point just where it hurts more, at the time where details make the difference. Modern Formula 1 is no longer decided only in curves or lines, nor is it decided only in the pilot's talent or in aerodynamic advances. It is decided on the margins, in the silences between the shouts of the engine, in the 2 or 3 seconds in which a car enters boxes, and the world stops. And it is in that microscopic fragment of time where McLaren, the most dominant team in terms of race pace in this 2025 season, is showing cracks. Not because the car fails, not because Norris or Piastri are making track mistakes, but because the most automated and choreographed part of the competition, the one that should work with a Suizo watch precision, is becoming its Achilles heel. When analyzing coldly, the McL39 has proven to be the most complete car of the year. He wins in pure speed, stands out in consistency of stint largo, and has improved in circuits where he suffered before. Lando Norris leads the championship for his own merits, with brilliant actions that speak of a pilot who has reached his competitive maturity. Oscar Piastri, meanwhile, has maintained a regularity that places it among solid candidates to the top 3 of the pilot championship. There is no weakness in the cars. There are no piloting errors. The problem is in operational execution. And that is where the question becomes disturbing. Is McLaren losing the boxes in boxes? The answer is not limited to a simple yes or no. What is happening is more complex. McLaren has reached such a high level of technical excellence that any mistake as small is magnified. In this context, a 4.1 second stop is not just a slow stop. It is a loss of opportunity, a strategic disadvantage, a door that opens for Red Bull, Mercedes, or Ferrari. Red Bull, with all its internal conflicts, has shown that its operational structure remains one of the most efficient. Ferrari, historically prone to errors, has corrected many of its weaknesses under the direction of Vasseur. Mercedes, even without having the car faster, is impeccable in pits. Everyone is waiting for McLaren to make more mistakes, because they know they can't beat them in pure rhythm. But they can take advantage of any carelessness. Therefore, what happened in Azerbaijan is not just an anecdote. It is a warning. If McLaren wants to crown Norris as world champion, he needs more than a brilliant car. It needs a structure that works with surgical precision. Each race, each stop, every detail. Because at this level, the luxury of making mistakes no longer exists.